Good evening, and welcome to the 2012 Outrun the Sun Melanoma Research and Education Forum. I'm Ann Richards, midday host on B105.7. It's a great pleasure to serve as the MC for this wonderful program. I've been involved with Outrun the Sun for the past 2 years as MC of the race against melanoma, and I certainly recognize the importance of skin cancer prevention and melanoma research. Outrun the Sun is a very active organization in the fight against melanoma and other skin cancers, and tonight we'll learn just how active. I'm pleased to introduce the Executive Director and one of the founding members of Outrun the Sun, who will kick off the program by sharing some of this year's accomplishments. Please join me in welcoming Anita Day.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, is this working? Can you all hear me? Wonderful. Okay, and thank you for everything that you do for Outrun the Sun throughout the year. And thanks truly to each one of you here tonight. I see some familiar faces. I see some new faces. Are we getting some feedback here? Is it okay? Okay, we're good. I truly mean thank you when I say that you all chose to spend your evening with us. You're all busy people. You could have 10 other places that you could go tonight, but you chose to be here, and I thank you sincerely. I get very excited about this event every year. I look forward to it because it is one great opportunity that we have to talk directly with you about our programs, about new initiatives, about expanded initiatives. We'll even touch on maybe some challenges that we've had throughout the year. But as I said, I really get energized about this event because I get to see all of you come together. As I was thinking through some of the things that we wanted to discuss and some of the information that we wanted to share, I thought that it would be especially appropriate this year to give a little bit of background about the organization and to talk briefly about the inspiration from the inspiration of Outrun the Sun and why the founders chose to create this organization in the beginning. So I'm going to take you back. Just about 10 years ago, quite frankly. It was 10 years ago this past August 13th, to be specific. That was the day that my father, John Bussey, died of melanoma. Now, there was no arguing that he had lived a long and successful life. He lived to be 79 years old, and when he passed away, he did so with nothing but the love and the respect and the admiration of his family and friends. It was a difficult time, of course. It's difficult to lose a parent, and I will confess to you that not a day goes by when I don't think about my father and when I don't miss him. And any of you who have lost a parent know exactly what I mean. It was a difficult time, but it got even more difficult because 11 days after my father's passing, we also lost a very good friend to melanoma. He was a very dear friend of my husband's from childhood. His name was Gary Patton. Now, like my father, when Gary passed away, he was surrounded by people who loved and adored him. But unlike my father, you could argue that Gary didn't have a chance to live a long life. You see, Gary passed away 3 months after he turned 40. He left behind a young wife, a then 3-year-old son, and that's when you say life really isn't very fair. This was 10 years ago. And when my father and Gary were going through their treatments and when they were looking for cures, there wasn't a lot to be had in 2002. It didn't exist. But they took what they had. My father was offered one clinical trial. That's what was available for a 79-year-old man in 2002, and he took it. He said, by golly, if it doesn't work for me, it may work for someone else. It may help someone down the road. Gary, he pulled out all the stops. He got involved in every treatment that was FDA approved in 2002. He got involved in several clinical trials. But very sadly, nothing that was available 10 years ago was able to extend their lives. It was a very sad time. It was a very sad time. That was 2002. That was 10 years ago. That was then. And this is now. It's 2012. And we have more clinical trials available for melanoma patients than we have ever had in history. We have more drugs that are FDA approved to treat melanoma patients than we have ever had Have we made progress in the last 10 years? Oh, you bet we have. Absolutely. It has been tremendous progress. Are we where we want to be? Are we where we need to be? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. One person dies of melanoma every hour, one American. So think about that just for a moment. We're gathered here tonight for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours. Think about that. Think about the effect that this is having on some families as we're sitting here tonight. This is why Outrun the Sun exists. We have to exist. We need to exist. And so over the past few years, we have established several different kinds of programs. Programs that help educate the communities about skin cancer prevention, about sun safety, and programs that focus on melanoma research. As you know, you're going to hear from some of the research scholars tonight. Outrun the Sun has to exist. We have to make progress. So one of the programs that I want to talk with you about tonight is probably the program I'm most excited about. It was our very first program. It's the Outrun the Sun Race Against Melanoma. Many of you are familiar with this. We've hosted it now in Indianapolis for 8 years. It's become a very strong, recognized program. But what excited me so much this year is that on August 3rd, my sister, Jonna McDougall, and I, Jonna is another founder of the organization, we traveled to Rochester, New York to participate in the Outrun the Sun Race Against Melanoma Rochester. The Rochester Melanoma Action Group is the first nonprofit organization to license the race from us. And I can't tell you how touching it was and really how emotional my sister and I felt when we arrived in Rochester and we saw the signs and we saw the arrows, this way to the Outrun the Sun race. And we got there and here were all these people rushing in wearing their Outrun the Sun shirts, and we saw survivors in their blue shirts, and we saw teams, and we saw sponsors, and it was a beautiful thing. And I want to thank the Rochester Melanoma Action Group for doing an absolutely superb job. And we have Ann Dowden with us tonight, who's one of the founding members of the Rochester Melanoma Action Group. You'll be hearing from Ann a little later, and she's here with Linda Bell, who's another founder of the organization. We couldn't thank them enough. And you'll be seeing these races crop up around the country. I have a conversation scheduled on Monday with some people in Chicago saying, hey, we're interested in putting one on here. So we're going to see that program expand, and now we have finally seen those initial steps. It's been a long time in the making. Another program that we launched, it's a new program, we launched it this year, it's called the Outrun the Sun Race in May. Now the reason that we created this program is because we get lots of calls, lots of interest from people around the country saying, we found you online. We see Outrun the Sun. We love your mission. We love your logo. We love your name. We want to volunteer. And we say, that's wonderful. We would love to have you volunteer. Where do you live? And they'll say, oh, we're in Dallas. We're in San Diego. We're in Boise, or wherever they might be. And we are a small nonprofit organization. We don't have the structure and the network in place yet to really give people good opportunities to volunteer for us around the country. So we put this program together. And basically, I want you to think of it this way. It's sort of a virtual race, if you will. People go online to our website. They register. They pay $10. Okay, it's very inexpensive. They get sun safety education information, ways to prevent skin cancer. They can download a race bib number if they would like, that they can put it on. And then any day throughout the month of May, which is National Skin Cancer and Melanoma Awareness Month, they can run or walk in support of our mission. Now this year we saw people gather groups. We saw people who participated on their own. They would go out, they'd run, they'd walk, but they were able to grab onto something, particularly people who have family members or loved ones who are undergoing treatment for melanoma. It gave them something to do. Many of us know what that feels like. You want to be able to do something. This gave people something to do. Now, I'd like to tell you that we had 10 million people participate and we made $100 million, but that's not the case. I'd be lying. It was much lower level than that. But what it was a good, solid base that we are going to grow in 2013. I was pleased that Bristol Myers Squibb came on as a main sponsor for this program. We were very grateful to them. But the partners that we assembled for this were many. It included USA Track and Field, the Roadrunners Club of America, the Independent Running Retailers Association, the Dermatology Nurses Association, Midwest Melanoma Partnership, and the Running Network. And through all of these different partners, we pushed out information and messages to their members, their constituencies, their audiences, their customers, and people started to register. We did this because nothing like this exists, but now it does, and it will grow each year. It will get larger and larger and larger, and we've already started signing on new partners for next year. It's very, very, very exciting. We continue our partnerships with the YMCA of Greater Indianapolis. We, several years ago, created their first ever Sun Safety program. It's a curriculum that they can use in their summer youth camps. So for several years now, we have been training very young children how to be sun safe and telling them why. This is a program that we are planning to expand on a national level. We continue to work with USA Track and Field. We're in our second year of a 3-year agreement as their official sun safety partner. So we're reaching runners and walkers throughout the country with lots of very important sun safety information because runners are out in the sun a very long time and they need to protect themselves. We have some new programs that we have established. I'm very excited about this year. We started working with Conner Prairie. I'm sure many of you have visited this outdoor interactive history park here in the city. And Conner Prairie has done a superb job of putting sun safety information out to their audiences. They built a shade structure in one area. They provided free sunscreen samples to their visitors. And so we're hoping to really expand that program with them as well. But again, we're trying to reach the masses. Education is key, as we all know. We just recently, in the past couple of weeks, became the official sun safety partner of the Roadrunners Club of America. This is the largest association for running clubs and running events in the nation. They have more than 1,500 running clubs, and within each of those clubs, they have hundreds and hundreds of people. So again, we have this perfect network that we can work through to push out information and to educate. It's so important to educate, and we love having these partners. Another thing that I want to point out is we started, we actually instituted a new fund within Outrun the Sun. It's called the John Gongas Melanoma Education Fund. And this came about late this summer. I was contacted by a woman from Gongas Research. It's a large research company in Auburn Hills, Michigan. And the woman told me on the phone, we lost our founder to melanoma. And he was 50 years old. And he was diagnosed with the disease and passed away 7 days later. So his colleagues certainly wanted to recognize him. Am I still on? Are we still going? Okay. They wanted to recognize him and honor his life and honor him. And so what they did was they went online to look for organizations that support skin cancer education and melanoma research. And what I was told is that they reviewed our website very, very thoroughly, as they did many other groups like ours. And she said, and we picked you. It was unanimous. We picked you because you felt like us. That made me feel really good. So in talking with them, what they did was they established a $10,000 goal to open this fund, and they have already far surpassed that. So we will be able to use those funds to further extend our educational programs to kids and adults. We are so touched by the people who put these types of funds together. We have 3 of them already established at Outrun the Sun. We have the William E. Holland Melanoma Research Fund. It was established in honor and in memory of Bill Holland by his family and his friends. This supports wonderful research efforts, our research scholar program, as does the Pamela Henney Melanoma Research Fund. We could not have our scholar program without this support. It couldn't happen. It's vital. We have the William Paul Peterson Education Fund that was established by the Rees-Camp Peterson families. This fund helped us really launch into the program that we're doing with the Indiana University School of Medicine that Dr. Lawrence Mark will tell you about here shortly. Again, we're trying to look at novel ways of making a difference, new ways, creative ways. So with these funds comes a great responsibility, but also, it's very touching that people house their funds with us with Outrun the Sun. Now, Obviously, I can't do all of this myself. I have a lot of help. And so there's some people that I really want to thank. I want to start with the scientific review panel. These are the people who review the applications that our scholars send to us. Because let me tell you, I'm not the one to be reviewing them. Very technical. And so we have 4 people that I'm very grateful to. Dr. Ted Logan is with the IU Simon Cancer Center. He joined our panel just this past year, as did Deborah Lang from the University of Chicago. Dr. Lang was actually one of our first melanoma research scholars, and so now she serves on the panel, as does Stephen Feldman. Dr. Feldman is with Wake Forest. He was our very first melanoma research scholar. So be careful, we may come at you at some point, ask you to be on the panel, Dr. Cheng. And then we have Dr. Neil Shear. He's the director of the Department of Dermatology at the University of Toronto. He also has been sitting on this panel for a number of years now, and we are very, very grateful to them. I want to certainly thank our board of directors. These are people who truly have become like family to me, and I cannot really picture Outrun the Sun without them. So thank you to our board, and they will be announced and introduced here shortly. I want to thank David Morton with Sunrise Sports Group. David has helped us create some partnerships, mainly on a national level. He's a tremendous help as well. Now, one thing I will share with you that probably no executive director ever wants to share or admit to, and that is that this past year we had a 50% staff turnover rate. And those of you who realize the fact that we only have 2 employees know that we lost one. We saw the retirement of Martha Runyon. Martha was with us as our business and event manager for a number of years. She did a stellar job. And when she left, she said, "Don't hesitate to call me whenever you have questions." And I think she's probably living to regret that at this point, because we have her on speed dial. And we definitely stay in touch with Martha, and she will be volunteering for us. But this opened up the door to really revamp the position. And so we created a new position, which is marketing and event manager. And after receiving somewhere between 125 and 150 resumes and reading through them and conducting interviews, I said, I know who is right for this job. And her name is Mary Beth Dedman, and she's sitting back in the corner. Mary Beth is a pleasure to have in the office. She's professional. As you can see, she does an excellent job in terms of organizing events. And we're very, very, very pleased to have her involved. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have had our challenges over the past year. I think if you talk to any nonprofit organization, large or small, they will probably tell you that the #1 challenge is funding. We're no different. We have wonderful ideas at Outrun the Sun. We just don't always have the funding to implement those ideas. And we go knocking on doors. And we're a very small organization. We're a very, very small nonprofit organization, but we think big and sometimes we act big. But we go knocking on lots of doors, lots of big doors. And a lot of times those doors are answered, and a lot of times they're shut in our faces. But we keep knocking and we keep trying. And sometimes we hear, oh, it's not a good year, this doesn't align with our goals. We understand all of that. Sometimes we hear, well, just be patient with us. We'll come around, just be patient. Well, I think back to when my father and when my friend Gary were sick. And there's no time for patience. There's time to act. And the time to act is now. It is 2012. We're moving into 2013. It is time to act. And the next year is going to be a very active one for us. And as I look around this room, I invite each and every one of you in some way, shape, or form to please join us. Join us as we move forward. Join us as we make a difference. Again, I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you. And now my next role is to introduce the president of Outrun the Sun. I have seen Dr. Seacrest take on many, many roles. Well, she has been involved with this organization. As president, certainly she helps lead the organization. She helps with our strategic planning. As a dermatologist, she has volunteered at health fairs. I've seen her doing skin checks. As just an all-round good person, I've seen her seriously roll up her sleeves and lift heavy objects when we have things to move around race time. Dr. Seacrest has the attitude that she will do whatever it needs to needs done, whatever will make a difference, she will do it. And she's one of the people I truly cannot imagine Outrun the Sun without. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the president of the Outrun the Sun Board of Directors, Dr. Keter Sechrist.
Thank you, Anita, for that kind introduction. It is just wonderful to see all of you here tonight. Every year the crowd gets a little bigger, and I'm so excited for you to hear our scholars speak to you because they are inspiring. I thank you for your support. As president of the board of Outrun the Sun, I have the pleasure of working with my fellow board members, the founding members, and staff to help shape the direction of Outrun the Sun. I'd like to take a moment to recognize our board and founders and also to thank them for their contributions. So if you'll please stand to be recognized as I call your names. The founders of Outrun the Sun are Marcy Reddick, there's Marcy, Jennifer Patton Sarno, Jonna McDougall, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight because of a work commitment, and our executive director, Anita Day. And now I'd like to introduce the board of directors. Our vice president is Rob Martin. There's Rob. Treasurer is Steve Holland. Steve. Secretary is Mary Temple. Then there's John Watts, Vicki Reeskamp, Scott Haney, Dr. John Fennell, Tricia Yoder, our newest board member, Lee Tumanella, thank you, and Lisa Julerad and Matt Morris had work commitments tonight and couldn't make it. It is a true joy to work with all of you, and we appreciate the guidance and support that you provide Outrun the Sun. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Sechrist. We have an excellent panel of speakers with us tonight, representing both the educational and research partnerships established at Outrun the Sun. We'll open the floor for Q&A at the end of the evening following all of our presentations. And now I'm honored to introduce a gentleman who's world-renowned for his research in melanoma. He's the System Medical Director for Indiana University Health Cancer Services, Dr. Douglas Schwarzentruber, who's spent several years working at the National Cancer Institute, where he was involved in early basic and clinical studies for a novel cancer vaccine that has shown great potential in treating advanced melanoma. Many of you know that in 2010, he was named to Time Magazine's top 100 most influential people in the world for his cancer research. And we are pleased to have him share some remarks about the current state of melanoma research. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Douglas Schwarzentruber.
Thank you, Ann. So my remarks are going to be very brief, and I thought I could take this opportunity to actually thank Outrun the Sun. We are very privileged to have such a wonderful organization right here in our city. And the mission of this organization contributes so much to our patients through the research that you support, as well as the scientists, as we'll hear from tonight, that benefit from those funds to pursue the academic mission to help us learn how to develop new treatments for melanoma. I also wanted to thank Anita because, as you heard in this opening address from Anita, she has a passion that is contagious. That's why this organization is so successful. There is a very strong purpose and mission, but when you have a leader that has that kind of energy and vision, that makes for a successful organization. So she was able to introduce everybody else. I want to actually ask for you to applaud Anita. So also part of the excitement tonight, I think,
a couple of slides together just to make it easier.
Is some competition here. The new developments in melanoma, as Anita mentioned, we've come a long ways in the decade, but much of the progress has been made just in the last couple of years. For the very first time, we have new drugs that show an improvement in survival. So we've been treating patients with melanoma for how many years without ever having a bit of evidence that we were prolonging their lives until just into the last year or so with the new drugs like Yervoy or our new BRAF kinase inhibitors. These are new drugs that are on the market now and available for wide use. And it all started with some of the basic science, like we're going to hear about tonight. It's that special research interest that leads to an idea that goes one step further, and then we are able to evaluate it in clinical studies, as Anita made reference to, and terrific. We have another winner. Isn't that exciting? So in the last couple of years, we've made so much progress, and thank you, Outrun the Sun, the entire organization, for having that vision and for supporting young investigators that are going to help us find the next cures for melanoma. So thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Schwartzentruber, for all of your contributions to research and also for setting the stage for tonight's Melanoma Research Scholar. As you know, supporting melanoma research is a key mission at Outrun the Sun. This is accomplished through the Outrun the Sun National Melanoma Research Scholar Program, a program made possible in part by the William E. Holland Melanoma Research Fund and the Pamela Henney Melanoma Research Fund. Please join me in recognizing the families of Mr. Holland and Ms. Henney for creating these research funds at Outrun the Sun. The support of your families and friends is making a significant impact, and we thank you. This year, we're recognizing one of our two new research scholars, Dr. Ching Cheng, who is from New York University, and we certainly look forward to hearing his presentation.
Hello?
Just this morning. Just this morning. It is going through. We received word that our other scholar, Dr. Omar Ali, could not be with us tonight because he's experiencing a severe migraine. We wish him a quick recovery and look forward to his presentation at next year's forum. We apologize for this change in the agenda. Before we invite Dr. Cheng to the podium, we are honored to have with us Dr. Anand Ganesan, who's joining us via teleconference from the University of California, Irvine. Dr. Ganesan is a 2009 Outrun the Sun Melanoma Research Scholar, and we welcome him back tonight to discuss his team's very recent research discovery that involves identifying a reason that melanoma is resistant to chemotherapy. Welcome, Dr. Ganesan, and thank you for joining us. Is he up there? Da, 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 da.
Can you see me now?
Hello?
You got me?
Are you there, Dr. Ganesan?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, good.
Can you hear me?
The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, I was trying to see if I could put up a little presentation with a couple of slides, but that didn't seem to be working for me. So I'll just kind of talk off the cuff. So thank you so much for having me speak to you guys again about some of our more recent work. So basically, one of the problems with melanoma that we all know is that it's very resistant to chemotherapy. That includes both conventional chemotherapies, which we've used for a decade to treat melanoma, such as cisplatin or dacarbazine or other chemotherapeutic agents, in addition to some of the newer described agents, which I just heard mentioned, such as Yervoy or the BRAF inhibitor vemurafenib. So we know very well that these tumors respond very rapidly after they're treated with these agents. So our group, we tried to use a new strategy to try to identify why melanomas are resistant to these therapies. And our strategy was to kind of think about melanoma tumors as a jigsaw puzzle, or as one of those those lawn puzzles that you used to play when you were a kid, Jenga, where you pull out each individual piece and see how the tumor survives. So we were identifying genes that when you inhibit their function, the tumor would no longer function properly. And what we found is that when we probed all of the genes in the genome, when we pulled out individual genes to identify which ones regulate chemoresistance, we found that it turns out that melanoma cells, what they do is they turn off the mechanisms that sense DNA damage. So most of the chemotherapies that we've used for years initiate DNA damage in melanoma cells, and that damage in normal cells would cause these cells to die, because nobody wants to have mutated DNA, because you can't replicate mutated DNA, and the tumor cells can no longer grow. But what melanoma cells do is they shut off the mechanisms that sense this damage, so then all of a sudden they're resistant to these chemotherapies. So our most recent work, what we identified is that when you turn on the sensing mechanism again, they're sensitive all over again. So this identifies a new way to treat melanoma, and it's a new way to make therapies that we've used for the last 20 years more effective. So basically you turn on the sensing mechanism, and then all of a sudden the tumors are sensitive to chemotherapy. So what we're doing now in our lab is we have some data that in mouse models, when you turn on this mechanism, all of a sudden the cells are sensitive again. And so now we're trying to develop some better small molecule agents that we can try to move into the clinic to directly help melanoma patients. So the idea would be to combine this therapy with conventional DNA damage therapies, which we know how they work very well, and to treat subsets of melanoma tumors. But I think what's even more important now than the findings, which are great and which couldn't have been accomplished without the support of your organization, is to talk a little bit about how all of this works in terms of going from getting funding for something like this to making a discovery. So in this case, to use what we've done as an example, we started with where we did this large-scale RNAi screen when I was a postdoctoral fellow or finishing my dermatology residency. And we identified all these genes. And basically what happened is we had this great set of data that could lead to this great finding. But we basically had to sit on it for a period of about 6 years, because to get enough funding to actually do all of these studies to translate this result from an initial finding to something that may be relevant to patients takes that long, if not longer. And even more surprising about that is the fact that almost all of this funding was done through funding through private or charity organizations, and not through funding from the NIH. Because the NIH only wants to fund studies when they get to the end stage, or when they're when people are established and they say, well, we're going to put money in this because we know it's 100% going to work. But that's not how new ideas are generated. So the point is that it's really critical that organizations like yours continue to fund young researchers and focus on young researchers who are doing these types of work, because there is no other source for funding. And the NIH budget is shrinking as we speak. Given next year with the proposed cuts, it could cut up to 20% of grants from extramural investigators, which means that a lot of these cancer advances that would happen in the future, depending on who ends up winning the White House, can go one way or the other. So I think it's critical that you guys continue to support research, and I can't thank you enough for how much help you've given me as we've gone on to make this important discovery. So thank you so much for your help and support.
Our scholar with us tonight is Dr. Ching Cheng, who is a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Dermatology at the New York University School of Medicine. He's a graduate of Utrecht and Radboud University, the Netherlands. Please welcome Dr. Ching Cheng.
This microphone works. Of course. What's the on button? They told me that in the beginning, and of course I would get it. Okay. There. Okay. Now I find the slide. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, I would like to thank Outrun the Sun for inviting me to this wonderful place called Indianapolis, and give me the opportunity to present my research. And my presentation today is titled Dysregulation of p53 in Melanoma Mediated by Loss of OCA2. Let me see if this works. Oh, okay. Well, that's the title page. And there you go. So, let's start off first off with melanocytes. So, melanocytes are specialized cells that produce melanin. And melanin is the pigment that gives color to your skin and eye. Melanin production requires a number of specific proteins, including tyrosinase and OCA2. Now, loss of these proteins can cause various forms of albinism, and the OCA2 protein is actually named after one of these forms, oculocutaneous albinism type 2. Now, melanoma is a type of skin cancer that originates from these melanocytes. So, melanocytes are presumed to have evolved resistance mechanisms that allow for survival in the harsh environment of the skin. And these mechanisms may contribute to chemoresistance in melanoma. Now, melanoma is notorious for its high resistance to chemotherapy, making it very difficult to treat. For example, the treatment with the BRAF inhibitors, initially it works very well, but over time the tumor returns because the cells have developed resistance to the BRAF inhibitor. So it is important to find new and better treatment options. And the way to do that is by understanding the biological mechanisms that underlie melanoma initiation, progression, and chemoresistance, so that we can find new targets for future therapies. So, now recent studies have indicated a possible role of the OCA2 in melanocyte transformation and melanoma resistance. Now, OCA2 was found to be the 5th most frequently downregulated gene in melanoma compared to melanocytes. And OCA2 polymorphisms have been associated with an increased risk of melanoma. Furthermore, in mouse melanocytes, loss of OCA2 expression increases resistance to chemotoxins. And recently, we discovered that the p53 signaling pathway was differentially expressed in mouse melanocytes that lack OCA2. So this brings us to the main question of our study. Is loss of OCA2 involved in dysregulation of p53 function in melanoma? So now I have to talk about p53. What is this p53? Now, p53 acts as a sensor of cellular stress. So under normal conditions, p53 is bound to its inhibitors, MDM2 and MDM4. And for simplicity, only MDM2 is shown in this figure. Now, MDM2 targets p53 for degradation, and MDM4 inhibits p53 activation. So in normal conditions, p53 is inactive. Now, when there's cell stress, for example, DNA damage, dissociation of p53 and its inhibitor will allow activation of p53. And this activation turns on mechanisms that control or regulate processes that regulate cell cycle arrest and program cell death, which is also called apoptosis. Now, during cell cycle arrest, the cell can conduct DNA repair, and this allows for recovery. Now, when a cell has too much damage, the programmed cell death will allow its elimination. And so, combined, these mechanisms show that provide cellular and genetic stability. Now in the next figure, I won't go too much into detail this, but as you can see by all the boxes that show tumor suppression, you can see that p53 has a crucial role in all these different mechanisms that support tumor growth and tumor formation. Now, if p53 pathway is dysfunctional, then damaged cells can survive, and these can develop into cancer cells. Now, mutations in the p53 gene have been found to be very common in most human cancers, with even a high rate in certain types of cancers. For example, studies have shown that 50 to 80% of all lung cancers have a p53 mutation, and also 40 to 60% of colorectal cancers have mutated p53. And also in the non-melanoma skin cancers, the basal cell carcinoma and the squamous cell carcinoma, 50 to 60% of these cancers have a mutation in p53. But this is not the case for melanoma. Actually, the p53 gene is intact in almost 90% of all melanomas. So what could be happening here? Well, it could be that these cancers, melanoma, can find other ways to dysregulate p53 function, and actually recently studies have shown that there's evidence, that suggests that there is a role for p53 in the formation of melanoma. I'll show you one example here. In this study, it's from earlier this year, June 2012, it shows that the p53 inhibitor, MDM4, is overexpressed in 69% of melanomas. Well, let me just show you, because I'll have to explain this figure. So these are controls where you can see a little bit of MDM4 expression, and these are all the melanoma samples where you can see there's so much more MDM4 expression. And this same study shows that overexpression of MDM4, these high levels of MDM4, actually inhibit the process of programmed cell death. So these melanoma cells are more likely to survive. So now I'm going back to my study, and our question, is loss of OCU2 involved in dysregulation of p53 in melanoma? So as a start, we started with a genetic comparison. So we compared the genes between normal wild-type mouse melanocytes with mouse melanocytes that were lacking OCU2. And as you can see, is that there's a lot of differences in expression of all kinds of genes, indicated by all these upwards and downwards arrows. And as you can see, there's a lot of difference. So there's p53 itself is downregulated in the OCU2 null mouse melanocytes, but also its activators are down, while its inhibitors are up. And as a result, all these downstream processes, you can see there's differences as this DNA repair is down, and also cell cycle arrest is down. So there's a lot of things going on in the p53 pathway in these OCU2 null mouse melanocytes. So next, we exposed our mouse melanocytes to ultraviolet radiation, which causes DNA damage. Now, DNA damage in normal cells, it will activate p53, and we can detect activated forms of p53. As you can see right here, this is activated forms, and these are all in the normal mouse melanocytes. But when we expose the OCU2 null mouse melanocytes to UV radiation, there's no activation of p53 at all. And this suggests that somehow the activation of p53 in response to DNA damage is shut off. It's not working in these melanocytes. So I've told you that OCT2 null mouse melanocytes were also less sensitive to chemotoxins, and this figure gives an example of the sensitivity of mouse melanocytes to a chemotoxin called ATO. As you can see, the curve downwards, that's the normal wild type mouse melanocyte, but the red line, which floats around the 100% mark, that's the OCT2 null mouse melanocyte, which is pretty much resistant to this drug, to this chemotoxin. So what we did next is that we used a specific inhibitor of MDM2 and see if we could increase the chemosensitivity of these OCT2 null melanocytes. Now, as shown before, you can see with the orange bar, almost 100, this is with ATO alone. So the cells are pretty much resistant. But when you combine ATO with the MDM2 inhibitor, the cell survival decreases significantly. So the sensitivity goes up, resistance goes down. These cells are much more sensitive to cell death when you add the chemotoxin in combination with the MDM2 inhibitor. So finally, in the next experiment, we used a human melanoma cell line. And we used a human melanoma cell line that has lost its OCO2 expression too. So this one also has no OCO2. And what we did is then we made 2 clones. We reintroduced OCO2 back into these cells. So they will have expression of OCO2 again. And then we exposed them to ATO again. And what we can see is that indeed when you compare the paternal line with the 2 clones, is that the 2 clones are much more sensitive to ATO than the parental line. So bringing back OCO2 into this melanoma cell line made them more sensitive to this chemotoxin. So, to summarize, p53 plays an important role in tumor suppression. And the p53 pathway is involved in melanoma, despite its low frequency, mutation frequency in this certain type of cancer. Well, we've seen that dysregulation of p53 function in melanoma could be mediated by other mechanisms in melanoma, such as by overexpression of p53 inhibitors. What we think is that loss of OCO2 could also dysregulate p53 function in melanoma. And recent studies have shown that there are indications that loss of OCO2 expression is indeed involved in the melanocyte transformation into melanoma and into melanoma chemoresistance. Now, for future directions, of course, there's still a lot of research to be done. First of all, we have to find out if there's indeed the correlation between loss of OCO2 and p53 dysregulation in human melanoma. We have to do much more research into that, and we need more statistics in that. Also, how exactly is OCO2 and p53 related? We don't know what the direct link is between these 2 proteins. We'll also continue doing experiments by reintroducing OCO2 in cell lines and see if we can increase sensitivity in melanomas. And if we can see indeed, when we reintroduce OCO2, if we can see if the p53 function is restored. And we also like to test if we can increase melanoma sensitivity by modulating the p53 pathway, for instance, by using MDM2 and MDM4 inhibitors. So, all this work could not have been done without the support of the Department of Dermatology at the NYU School of Medicine in New York. Especially, I couldn't do all this without the guidance of my mentors, Dr. Prashila Manga and Dr. Sad Olo. Of course, I have to mention our sponsors, who are very grateful for their financial support. NIH, Dermatology Foundation, Outrun the Sun, and NYU Langone Medical Centers, the Centers of Excellence. And I would like to end with a special thank you to Outrun the Sun for all the work they do in raising awareness and raising funds to sponsor research, That's really important research funding, especially nowadays when funding for research is getting cut even more, and it's really hard to get all the fundings to conduct your research. So thank you very much to Outrun the Sun, and I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Cheng, for a very informative presentation. So Anita, he's probably a future member, right? Yeah. Outrun the Sun believes that education is key when it comes to detecting skin cancer. Clearly, this is true when it pertains to individuals recognizing their own potentially dangerous skin conditions. It also is critical for medical professionals to know how to recognize and detect skin cancer, regardless of whether they are dermatologists or are practicing in other areas of medicine. A few years ago, Outrun the Sun approached the Indiana University School of Medicine with the idea of expanding the dermatologic curriculum so that all medical school students would be trained to detect skin cancer, not just those students studying dermatology. And generous donors came forward to help make this idea a reality. Please join me in thanking the Peterson-Reescamp families for creating the William Paul Peterson Education Fund at Outrun the Sun, which has supported this program. And joining us tonight is Dr. Lawrence Mark, Assistant Professor of Dermatology at the IU School of Medicine. Dr. Mark has spearheaded this novel education program. Welcome, Dr. Mark.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, sounds like it. So I'm gonna start off with sort of the scope of the problem and how things are. I'm kind of preaching to the choir when I speak about the scope of the problem for melanoma. And I sort of brought up the latest estimates for what we expect it to be at the end of 2012, with about 1 in 50 Americans getting melanoma in their lifetime at this point. We're expecting over 76,000 invasive melanomas to be identified this past year, 55,560 of those in situ. So you add those together, over 100,000 cases for sure. And the number of deaths from melanoma continues to rise. When I started giving this sort of talk, I was talking, 7,500 deaths in a year, 8,500, now over 9,000 deaths in a year from melanoma. And we put that into perspective. If we think about, there's 12 people passed away because of an infectious agent in a medical product that we had, and everybody's up in arms, but no, 9,180 deaths, okay, it's melanoma. That's not how jaded we should be. It's the 5th most common cancer of all. It is the greatest cancer killer for young women, okay? And when we think about it, when you go to the doctor, probably your primary care physician is going to be seeing 10-15% of what they see is going to be a dermatologic issue or have some dermatologic component where they need to be looking at skin. And for those folks who they have a skin problem, 70% of them are going to go see their primary care physician first. So really, it's okay. Dermatologists need to know what they're doing, but I think our primary care physicians need to know, and every physician needs to know what they're looking at on skin, at least to some degree, such that things don't get missed and that they don't become a larger problem than they otherwise would have been had they been identified sooner. We can only, at this point in time, despite all the research, finding melanoma early and surgically removing it is the only known curative method at this point in time. So this is the way things were back in 2006. We had 2 weeks of didactics on the IU School of Medicine campus for our medical students in their second year. And they might, if they wanted to, they could take a month of dermatology elective. And approximately 40% or less opted to do that. And otherwise, they got some informal and otherwise unreliable education in melanoma. If they happened to see one that was on the wards in the hospital or in one of the other clinics, so be it. But there wasn't any impetus that they had to learn something about melanoma. So in order to rectify that shortfall in 2007, I don't remember exactly how it all worked out. I think someone came to me about it. It's like, well, yeah, Dr. Sechrist actually came to me and said, yeah, that sounds like a great project, and we should revamp the medical school's curriculum on melanoma such that all the medical students in some way get better exposure and better education regarding identification, management. They may not be managing it directly, but if you're a primary care physician, heck, if you're an ophthalmologist and you see it, then you need to know some of the basics about who does this person need to go to, how do we need to organize this, and have it on my radar to even think about it when I see my patient. And so we've been working on revamping the medical student curriculum for many years now. I apologize for how slow the wheels of the university turn, but little by little, we've been getting there. Year by year, we've been getting there. So in 2008, we had developed a problem-based learning module that we tried to institute, and that was for our first-year medical students. It's really sort of up and running every year now. I'm going to be doing the second year where I'm the preceptor and going over questions and having some of our melanoma patients actually come to the session so that the first-year medical students can ask questions of people who've had and experienced melanoma themselves and get their thoughts, not just from me. We instituted a web-based surgical management module. So every medical student so every first-year student and every third-year student now also has a melanoma module or a problem-based learning session that they have to learn about, they have to go through. And they all do a surgical subspecialty rotation. And so I'm actually going to show some excerpts of, and that didn't come out very well, I'm sorry. But in any event, there's a portion that the medical students have to read and learn, and then the preceptor goes over some of the knowledge behind that. And for the surgical module, one of the things we talk about is sentinel lymph node biopsy and how it's done. So they're not typically going to be doing it themselves, but they have an understanding of what a person has to go through. When would you do this? When would you need that? And who do I need to send this person to such that they get the best care that they can? In 2009, we had they're called objective structured clinical exams. I think they call them a different name now, and anyone who came in the building from the 4th floor would have seen the rooms where they have the mock patient rooms for testing of the medical students on their clinical skills. And so we have the ability that a patient with it's makeup like Halloween, where they have a spot on their skin that the student is supposed to evaluate. And the spot itself actually is something somewhat benign, but if they don't ask for the patient to take their shirt off so that they can see a little bit more skin, and because they came in for a skin problem, let's see what is on your skin to see if there's anything we need to do. That's part of the what they need to do to actually pass this examination is you need to look at skin, or at least offer to the patient, may I see the rest of your skin so that we can make sure there's nothing to worry about. And then then on their back is another melanoma-looking spot. They should offer to do biopsy and not let it pass or go. Okay. In the dermatology elective, it was designated as a special course which denotes lifelong learning. The medical students have to have these core competencies. And to be one for lifelong learning means that you actually read something and you go to textbooks or go to the latest journal articles to get the best information and latest information about your particular topic. And that's part of what we have in dermatology. In 2011, I added a web-based medical management module for the fourth-year medical students. So now you see every single year gets hit. The original second-year didactic. You got a problem-based learning module. You've got a surgical module, and now you have a medical management module for those. I wanted it to be every medical student, but as it is those medical students, again, who take our dermatology elective. I will say I think the numbers are up these years for taking our elective. And for those who are on the melanoma or on the elective, they are required to spend half a day with me. I'm sorry for them, but they're all required to spend half a day with me in melanoma clinic. And in fact, I think tomorrow I'm going to be having 3 medical students with me all at once because I'm not here every Friday this month. And so the fourth-year module, this is sort of the thing that they get to learn about, and they have a case-based process. Well, what do you do when this patient comes into your office? And of course, the correct answer is that you do an excisional biopsy and check this out. And then another excerpt from this talking about immunotherapy and the latest research. So this is always being updated when we get more information. I'm going to be going back and correcting it and adding the latest information for our students to learn the latest information that we have. So the program goal, better educating our medical students such that we can improve prevention, so telling patients, sunscreen, sun protective behaviors. Detection. Okay, you come into the office because you got this benign keratosis on your arm. Well, at least can I see your skin and see if there's anything else that we really should talk about? And management. Well, I know we did your biopsy. I know that we've identified a melanoma. We need to have you seen by the melanoma surgeon. We need you to see the dermatologist, and we need to have you see the melanoma oncologist. So I'm ticking off boxes here, things that we've gotten done, but there's actually an unfinished portion to all this, and that is that I would love to be able to package the entire program and have it used by all of the medical schools across the nation, such that all of our doctors across the nation are getting a standardized education in melanoma. And I think we could even go further and turn it into a continuing medical education project in which those who are already in practice get a bit of a refresher and start to think about these things, put it closer on their radar. And I want to finish with a very, very giant thank you to Outrun the Sun, and particularly the Peterson and Reeskamp families. It's been an incredible opportunity for teaching medical students for my career. And so I thank you from the bottom of my heart on all that. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mark, for providing an overview of this unique and far-reaching program. Good to hear of your work. Our final speaker tonight is Ann Dowden. Ann's presence here this evening is evidence of Outrun the Sun's expansion into other communities. Ann's one of the founding members of the Rochester Melanoma Action Group, a nonprofit organization located in Rochester, New York. The Rochester Melanoma Action Group is the first licensee outside of Indianapolis to host the Outrun the Sun race against melanoma. Please help me in welcoming Ann Dowden.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you to Anita and the board for giving us the opportunity to put our own stake in the ground against melanoma. I will share I'm the only speaker tonight to get a B- in high school biology, and yet I'm here. My clicker. Anita asked me to talk about why we got involved, and in 2008, I lost my dad. It was horrible, and so after about a year of feeling sorry for myself, I Googled melanoma fundraiser Indianapolis, and I found Anita, and it was like a fresh start. Say, okay, I'm going to do something. I'm not just going to take it anymore. So I volunteered at health fairs and worked at the race, and Anita shared with me, we want to see a chapter in different cities so we can get some critical mass here and really spread the word. Well, I drove home to Rochester and got my 5 Irish siblings together and said, why not us? Why can't we do this? And they unequivocally said, yep, we're in. Well, as you would imagine, 6 Irish siblings and our mother, we had some squabbles, we had lots of spreadsheets and phone calls, but we got it done. And there's our committee right there. Best group of people. The gift to me was speaking with my brothers and sisters every day across the miles, figuring it out, saying we're going to do this for the next family and the next family and the next family. That was a gift worth all measure. After about 18 months of work, on August 3rd, we had 588 runners come out, about 80 volunteers. Our race company said, you're twice as big as the other first-year race we've ever had. It's amazing. They told us maybe 100 runners if you're lucky. We ran out of registration forms. People just kept coming and coming, and they were so hungry for something to do because they had their own melanoma story, or maybe they just like to run 5Ks and the night was a nice one to do it. There's a picture of our race. The most meaningful part, and this is another tearjerker, about 2 days before the race, I got an email from a man, and he said, I saw your race online. I lost my wife at age 51 to melanoma 6 months ago. Due to that scenario, we don't have any money for the registration fee, but my boys want to run it. He goes, I'll volunteer, but can they work it off some other way? And I said, I just put in 2 free registrations. You come volunteer. You guys come and you just be our guest. You've had enough drama. You just come enjoy the night. So about 15 minutes after the race started, one of the other committee members and I walked down to the finish line. And we see this boy just hauling across the finish line. And he had a piece of paper. 16 minutes, 51 seconds. He burst across the finish line and hit the ground, and he unfolded it and said, this is for my mom. And it was one of the boys I gave the free registration to. Talking to his family was the most meaningful thing because we were their stake in the ground. They needed a place to gather, a place to say, we're not going to take it anymore. We want to give hope to the next family. That's what Outrun the Sun's all about, is hope for the next family. And that's where this is such a gift to everyone involved. That family will never be the same because of Outrun the Sun. And so 10 years from now, the next family will have better hope and their mom will still be alive. And so I would just like to say thank you, Anita. Thank you to the board. This has just been the most meaningful thing to me. And I'm not a very good public speaker. So thank you very much.
I think you're darn good. You got the point across. Thank you, Ann, for sharing what Outrun the Sun and the race have meant to your family, also to the Rochester community. So glad you were here. Now we would like to open the floor to anyone who has any questions of our panel. Anyone? Yes.
I'm a survivor with stage 3. Oh, here we go. Even though I love my oncologist and saw him once a month for over 5 years, and I was given a pretty low probability of having this conversation tonight, I was on, and this is to my doctoral staff, I was given the option of interferon, interleukin, and he said there's this one other one floating out around there, and if your insurance covers it, maybe we'll do that. And it was leucine, and I gave myself shots for 3 years. And although I don't, I give Christ the credit for my life tonight. But I rarely hear any docs talk about leucine as something that is put into play in these situations. And yet it was such a vivid part of my life for many years. What's up with that, if I might ask? Thank you.
Doctors?
Unless you tell me I'm going to die from it in 6 months.
Hello, I'm Leslie Fesher. I'm a medical oncologist at IU, and I specialize in melanoma and other skin tumors. Leukine, or GM-CSF, has been around for quite some time. As I'm sure most people are aware, we have a large group of medicines we use in melanoma. Unfortunately, many of them have some activity in a small group of people, but not consistent. And so I think the difficulty is that there's not been consistent benefit shown with Leukine. And to the point where we see overall survival benefit, which is obviously what we want to see. So I think there is a role, but nothing that's been established. And you might be one of the exceptions.
Any more questions? Yes. Doctors?
It certainly plays a role. So I actually remember seeing a what I felt was somewhat of an important abstract at one of the society meetings, and it showed that if you had one first-degree family member with melanoma, that there might be a 10% component of truly a genetic a component that you're at risk. If you had two first-degree family members, that brought your risk that there is sort of a genetic alteration in your family line to at least 50%. If you had three first-degree family members with a melanoma, it was 95% or better that there was a true germline genetic mutation in your family, P16, CDKN2. One of the melanoma, and unfortunately some of them are even associated with pancreatic cancer also, and the BRCA gene mutation can also be associated with melanoma. So there is a genetic component. But that's not necessarily across the board for everyone, and sometimes it is simply an event to the DNA without having an underlying family issue. Other thoughts to add, Doug?
Just a general comment that in most cancers, it's a very small percentage that can be familial. And we use a general number of maybe 5%, maybe a little bit higher in some, maybe a little bit lower in others. And that may be true in melanoma as well. So it's a small percentage of individuals who have a particular type of cancer that we can say it's really familial or a genetic, or there's a genetic basis for that cancer.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes.
We do. Well, my father and my brother are gone.
Well, the issue becomes if you test positive for the genetic mutation, does it mean anything that would be altered about how you should be followed and what you should be doing? And the question is probably no. If you have that many first degree family members with melanoma, then preventative measures are really all that we have available, and following and watching you. So every single year, at least, you're getting a full body skin check and a review of systems. And that goes for you and all of your family members. So if your gene was positive for this mutation or that, is that going to alter what we would do? Probably not. Yeah. Right. So there is no, at this point in time at least, there is no specific vaccination or medication to give to prevent the melanoma from forming. Being healthy, having a good active working immune system, antioxidants. That's probably, and obviously sun protection so that you don't have UV exposure causing DNA damage or oxidation of the cell is where you're at.
Yes.
That I had melanoma. I believe my father passed away from melanoma, and he was 15 at the time. My son had melanoma. What are the chances? My son had the lymph nodes removed, and thank God it wasn't in there. And mine was the incision removal, and it didn't go any farther than that. What are the chances of reoccurrence? Because whenever I have something come up medically, my doctor automatically ties it the possibility of the cancer being there. So he'll send me for additional tests just because of the history.
So there may be somebody else to answer too, but so I have two answers. One is that for you specifically, it depends on certain factors that relate to your original tumor. So we can look and see how thick the melanoma was that was removed, and based on that, give you some information about the chances of it coming back. If it does travel to lymph nodes, then the risk is increased that it'll come back. The other part of the answer is, though, that once you've had melanoma, you're at some risk of developing a new melanoma, maybe as high as a 10% chance of developing a second primary. So usually we talk about doing surveillance for two reasons. One is to make sure you don't get another one, and it's true for basal cell cancer and squamous cell cancer. If you've had melanoma, you're more likely to get one of the non-melanoma cancers and vice versa. So we want to screen the skin for any new cancers developing. But the other part of the surveillance is to make sure that the one that you had in the past hasn't come back. And so you're screening for recurrence of that original melanoma. Correct. So we always have a higher index of suspicion. So generally, I tell my patients, you're going to have the same aches and pains and the things that happen on an everyday basis. But if this time it's lasting longer or it's just behaving differently, and you say, well, this is not like me, and it's gone on for several weeks, then we say, well, it's time to maybe look into it a little bit further. Let's not put it off.
Any more questions? Don't leave here with a question on your mind. You won't sleep tonight. Anybody? Oh, yes.
Hi. My sister passed away in January from stage 4 melanoma, and I have to wait for my mother to get the drug name out. She was on a clinical trial. With which one, Mom? OCONVEX. They were injections that they were doing into her lesions on her leg. Any?
Do you want to answer that one,
I just want to know if there was any, what that is with that trial. It's still on a trial drug, I believe, isn't it? If there's, right.
And so the idea behind Oncovex is can we stimulate the immune cells and basically re-educate them to attack the melanoma cells as a foreign invader. So it is still investigational at this point.
It is a type of vaccine, and it actually involves a virus, and it's injected directly into the tumor. Like Dr. Fetcher said, it's to create an immune response. But when we think of vaccines in this way, these are what we call therapeutic vaccines. They're not preventative vaccines like we use for, infectious agents. And We use vaccines in cancer generally at a treatment stage, just because they're early in development and they're not far enough advanced yet to be able to use in a preventative setting or in a high-risk setting.
Interestingly, for the Oncovax, if I'm not mistaken, the virus was to allow the production of local GM-CSF, that is the leukine, directly within the tumor to stimulate that immune response. So a little connection there. Right, so on the trial, you were randomized to either getting leukine or the vaccine, and there were those, I believe, who got crossed over and ended up getting the vaccine when the leukine wasn't working for them.
Anyone else have a question? Okay. We're good. On behalf of Outrun the Sun, we extend a special thank you to all of our tremendous speakers tonight. And we appreciate the support of everyone here tonight and are grateful for your generosity and involvement in Outrun the Sun. Our speakers, board of directors, and staff will be available for a few minutes yet this evening, so please feel welcome to introduce yourselves and ask them any questions you like. And thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.